Welcome to Soccer Morning on NASN. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Welcome into Soccer Morning. Fantastic start to the week with a bit of music brought to you by Clint Irwin, starting goalkeeper of the Colorado Rapids. I have no idea if Clint Irwin wanted to keep that a secret, but he did donate to Soccer Morning and was DJ for a day. So all of the music today, courtesy of Clint Irwin. And by the way, just because a couple people asked, if you want to see all of the music that I'm using that fans and supporters have chosen for the show, it's on Spotify. There is a playlist. I'll link to it some point on my Twitter account. But we are here on a Monday. A ton of stuff to talk about from this weekend. This was a jam-packed weekend. You had the Super Clásico down in Argentina. You had the Clásico Nacional in Mexico. You had everything that happened in the Premier League, including a plane flying over Old Trafford with a Moyes out sign. You had Liverpool tonking Spurs. We'll talk about that, I'm sure. We had MLS action coming out of every orifice. That's a terrible mental picture, but we had MLS action, late goals, PKs, red cards. It was a fantastic weekend of soccer. I watched so much soccer this weekend that I was beginning to think I have a problem. Like, I don't normally worry about having a problem watching games, but I watched so much soccer. I got up on Saturday morning. I think I might have even checked in on a game on Friday. I definitely did. I'm trying to recall. Now, I can't even remember what game that was that I watched on Friday. I watched Juan Agudelo and FC Utrecht lose to NAC Breda. I watched some of that on Friday. After Juan Agudelo came out of the game, I stopped watching. But I still watched some of that game on a stream out there in the world. Got up on Saturday morning, got into, kid, wife, breakfast, coffee, everything else. Started watching the Premier League. Watched the Premier League until MLS came on. Watched MLS until the San Jose Earthquakes lost to the New England Revolution at something like 1 a.m. East Coast time, whenever that was. Got up on Sunday. Got into my day, blah, blah, blah. Watched some soccer. Watched more games. Watched the Premier League. Watched Liverpool beat Spurs. Watched, and we had all that action on Saturday with the Premier League, the late goals, West Brom, Cardiff. You had Chelsea losing to Crystal Palace and the fans going absolutely nuts after the game at Selhurst Park. You had MLS again, the late goals, the Red Bulls. Well, that was yesterday, Sunday. Watched the Red Bulls yesterday against Chivas USA. Score a late goal to equalize at home and get a point. It just was stellar. And again, I feel like I have a problem. And maybe this is a support group. Maybe that's what Soccer Morning's purpose is. This is a soccer junkie support group. You don't have to watch as much as I did to be a good soccer fan. You can pick and choose. You can either be, all Premier League, all MLS, obviously Liga MX or MX or however the actual Spanish speakers say that. Again, the fact that I got to watch the Super Clásico and that game was streamed free on YouTube, a fantastic quality stream that was shared yesterday, and using my modern technology, I was able to beam that to my 50-inch television, sitting in my living room, and watch Boca Juniors play River Plate in one of the most iconic stadiums in the world, La Bombonera. It was a fantastic weekend. I don't even know where to start. And luckily, the glory of this show is that we get people who know what they're talking about to fill in the gaps and put all of this in the proper context and give us some insight. We have Luke Moore from the Football Ramble joining us in just a couple of minutes to go over the Premier League action. Then we have Brian Dunseth, original winger, hardest working man in American soccer broadcasting. He'll join us to talk about RSL beating TFC, bringing them back down to earth a little bit, and all of the other MLS action. And I haven't even gotten to the breaking news in the U.S. men's national team world, which is that Martin Vasquez is out as the number 2, Tab Ramos in, and Bertie Votes has been hired as a consultant. And a lot of hand-wringing and questioning, and what does that mean exactly 75 days away from USA Ghana in Brazil? What does all of that mean? We'll talk about that as well. And then Sam Kelly, down in Argentina, will give us his perspective on the Super Clásico, talk a little bit about the Argentina Primera. We haven't talked enough about South American soccer recently. clearly, and this is the thing about the Super Classico. I love these games that are the records don't matter. Your place in the table does not matter. And by virtue of their win, River Plate is now in fourth place. First time River Plate has beaten Boca at La Bombonera in something like 10 years. River now in fourth. Boca's down there somewhere in mid-table, 10th, something like that. But that doesn't matter. Who cares? You had Riquelme with a stunning free kick. I mean, again, how do I even begin? Where do I even start? And I don't think 90 minutes is enough time. Trevor, can we get an extension? Can we do a 3-hour show today? I mean, I don't think I can do that. My voice won't hold up. But it feels like we need a 3-hour show to get through this. I am excited, as the kids like to say. We have a Twitter account at Soccer Morning. Questions for any of our guests, thoughts on anything that happened this weekend. Your best moment of the weekend. What was the thing that stood out for you that you just can't get out of your head? And again, I have so much flying around in my head, I can't pick one. I can't pick one. But I want to know what you had. At Soccer Morning on Twitter. We'll open up the phone lines probably last little bit of the show to get some insight on from you guys. Get your take on what happened. Sometimes I like to ask, how's your soccer? And I don't think that there's any chance that your soccer is bad today. Now, if you go and watch Sunderland West Ham a little bit later, maybe your soccer will get bad. Maybe that'll bring you back down to earth. In fact, here's a question. Do you even watch that game? I mean, it's going to be on. It's the Premier League, but it's Sunderland West Ham. It's a relegation scrap. It's a 6-pointer. I know there's some heat there and excitement there because, these teams need the points to try to stay up. But after everything we saw this weekend, all of the great soccer we saw this weekend, do you really want to bring yourself back down to earth with Sunderland West Ham? I don't know that you really want to do that. I'm not sure. That seems like you're sort of cutting yourself off at the knees. Yeah, this wonderful weekend of soccer from around the world. England, United States, Mexico, Argentina, and I'm missing stuff. Juve lost to Napoli in Italy. You have Bayern Munich doing their Bayern Munich thing. All of this exciting soccer, and then you're going to go watch Sunderland West. Maybe don't do it. Maybe this is the support group thing. Maybe that's what we come to here. We should tell each other, don't watch Sunderland West Ham. Just don't do it. I probably will watch it. I'm a junkie. How can you possibly say no if there's soccer on your television? All right, let's take a break. When we come back, Luke Moore from the world famous Football Ramble will join us to talk about the Premier League. Amazing stuff there. Don't go anywhere. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Back on Soccer Morning, joined now via telephone by Luke Moore from the world-famous Football Ramble. He's joining us on NASN. We're going to say it that way because I think Luke would like that if we said NASN around here. Luke, how are you,
Yeah,
sir?
definitely.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm not too bad. I'm all right.
Yeah. All right. So we've got. I started the show by talking about how much I watched this weekend, and it was too much. And part of the reason for you being here is to help me. I'm sure you'll help out our audience as well, but to help me take out the important parts of what happened in the Prem this weekend. I'm going to start at United. Look, they won, and I suppose that's really the takeaway. They beat Aston Villa. It wasn't much of a contest, but the storyline going into the game was the airplane and the message and the wrong one, Moyes out. And I railed a little bit on Friday. This seems like entitled United fans going too far, Luke. Am I wrong about that?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think most right-minded people feel the same way as well. I wouldn't deign to speak on behalf of Man United fans, but the overwhelming majority of them appear to be supportive of Moyes, and he seemed to have the crowd on his side when he came out for the game, and then obviously they won quite handily. I mean, I don't think they were at their best, but they won quite handily. And now the people who wasted their money on that ridiculous banner. I mean, football's gone way too far when this sort of thing happens. The people who wasted their money on it have started to look a bit silly. I just think that people are a bit self-aggrandising when they do things like that, and it doesn't really bode well for the future of football, does it, if this sort of thing's happening? No,
yeah, but then again, it is a small minority of the United fans who put their money together and wasted it on this banner. And I found it fascinating. I'm scanning the news before the weekend, and ITV has interviews with the pilot, and I'm just like, this is not necessary. This is too much. And give Moyes credit. I mean, it's easy to criticize him for where United sit, for the way that things have gone for them this season, but he has been completely, completely respectable through this whole process. Has consistently said, the fans have been great to me. I go out into the streets and everybody's nice. And I don't know that that's true necessarily, but he's putting on a brave face.
Yeah, I think they've also got a reasonable run of fixtures towards the end of the season in which they could end up, it might not look as bad. I mean, it's obviously not going to be what they're used to in terms of always competing for the title, but it's a big change for them, and then, as I said before on the show, no one on earth could replace Ferguson and make it a seamless transition. It'll be difficult, and that sort of thing of flying banners over Old Trafford and pre-promoting it and telling everyone you're going to do it. It's just, to me, it just smacks of a little bit of self-aggrandisement, in my opinion, and I don't think many Man United fans would have agreed with it, because it goes against what it is to be a football fan. And if you've got that much money to spend on a banner like that, and I mean, God, just spend it on something important, give it to charity or something, do anything with it, get behind your team or don't. As simple as that, really.
Before I get to the game, I do have a couple of points on the game, but I wanted to bring this up. Ken Early wrote a piece for Slate.com in which he references the story of Moyes getting the job last year in the summer, and I didn't realize this. This was from an account at the Telegraph in July of 2013, in which Moyes explains how Ferguson called him while he was out shopping, said, "Come to my house," told him, "You're the next manager of United." And Moyes, it was never a question. It was never, "Do you want to be the next manager of United?" It was sort of like it was foisted upon him and he had no choice. That's fascinating to me. Were you aware of that?
I didn't know that. No, I know that Ferguson essentially oversaw it all and had him around his house and stuff. But I mean, realistically, it was the biggest job in football available at the time, really. And there's no way an ambitious manager. And I think Ferguson knows Moyes quite well and knows that he probably wouldn't have thought about turning it down anyway. So it's not hugely surprising. But I mean, Ferguson, there was reports in the newspapers last week that Ferguson was getting a little bit of stick from the minority in the stadium as well for essentially giving Moyes the job. So I think it needs to be a bit of sort of adjustment for some Man United fans, it seems, to actually to realise that, and I said this on my show as well. Look, from this season onwards, Manchester United fans, you are going to know what it's like to be a normal football fan, and it will take a lot of adjustment. And obviously, some fans are adjusting to it a lot better than others are.
Yes, and the airplane.
By the way, I wouldn't like to gloss over the fact that United have played some poor stuff this season, and Moyes hasn't done as well as you hope he would have done. And there have been some pretty shocking performances and some questionable decisions made by Moyes. I'm not absolving him of all blame, but I'm just saying there needs to be a bit of perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, United fans have been spoiled for success, and this is an adjustment for them, and that's the airplay. Now, to the actual game, no, I think it would have been different, and Benteke could take his chances. I'm not sure what happened there. But then again, from a United perspective, you had both Mata and Kagawa on the field, and they both played well, and I think that's something that they can take positive out of that match. Yeah,
I mean, I'd like to think that it would. That performance fed into what I said to you last week about Van Persie not being around, and I think I was proven to be right, at least to an extent, with how those players performed in his absence. Now, Aston Villa aren't a great side away from home. They started off the season away very well, and had this game come along when they're in that purple patch and United were really struggling at home, then we could have seen a different result. But in the end, I didn't think it was vintage United, but I thought they did more than enough. But as you touched on, they did give away a lot of chances, and had Benteke been right at it, it could have been a different thing. But I like the way that United were obviously under immense pressure. I mean, they came into the game with that banner hanging over them, and it was a bit of an elephant in the room. And then they conceded as well to a decent free kick, but they showed great fortitude to come back and make it their game and win it quite handily in the end. And I deserve a bit of credit for that, because it's been difficult for them this season, and it's been a big change at the club. And I thought they battled well and eventually were deserved winners.
And now they have the Champions League to quote unquote look forward to. We'll see how the narrative goes there. But in terms of what's happening in the league, obviously United not a factor in the title race. To go back up to the top of the table, Chelsea lose to Crystal Palace at Selhurst Park. Certainly a shocking result for Chelsea. And the fascinating thing coming out of that match, Luke, was Jose Mourinho saying, well, we're out of the title race, after he had previously said, well, we're not in the title race. I mean, at this point, you just kind of wash away everything he says, and you feel like you need to ignore him. But what went wrong for Chelsea? Is this indicative of sort of Chelsea not being quite good enough, or is it? I don't know. Where do you put this result in sort of the grand scheme?
Well, it's clearly a poor result for Chelsea, and Palace were the better team. They had really good chances. They could have scored more goals. And I think what might have happened, the only thing I can sort of think could have happened, is that whilst Palace have been pretty good at home under Pulis in total, recently they've had a bit of a wobble, and it could have been that there was a bit of complacency there from Chelsea, who, and Mourinho said it himself, I mean, he said a lot of things, most of which aren't really worth commenting on, because he just said it to suit his own agenda and to try and to whip people up and deflect things away from his players and all that sort of thing. But one thing he did say after the game, which I found quite interesting, was that we don't ever lose games normally because the passion and the desire and the hunger was better than the other team. And he felt that's what had happened. And so maybe he was saying that to say, look, come on, kick them up the backside and say, come on, you've got to do better here. Because Palace aren't a terrible proposition at home. They've played well at home in patches this season, not least against Chelsea at the weekend. And of course, Speroni was different class, and I thought Joel Ward played really well as well. But it was, it's one of those games that can happen in the Premier League, and Palace are good at home, and it could have cost Chelsea the title. But there is a lot of football to be played yet. I also wonder if Mourinho wants to win the title next season with his own team. And that sounds a little bit weird, but I genuinely think he is that arrogant that he would prefer to use this season as a justification to buy a load of his own players and then push for it next season.
There's certainly an element of he wins either way. Either they win the title, and that's an amazing job by Jose Mourinho to take that team to the title, or they come up short and he has justification for what you said to remake this team and bring in his own players. I thought it was, look, with Jose Mourinho, you can never take anything at face value. And it's not just the words. He reportedly went into the Crystal Palace locker room to congratulate the team and Tony Pulis after the game. And is that just Jose Mourinho being a gentleman and being, a fantastic bit of sportsmanship? Or is it him, he knows that's going to get back to his team? Is that sort of a message? I mean, again, it's all sort of tied into whether or not he's trying to motivate or turn the story, the narrative to his to his will and his to his benefit. But at the same time,
everything he says is essentially calculated. Every single thing he does is calculated. He's very good at that. And for some reason, I mean, I've got no particular problem with Tony Pulis, but he seems to be a really big fan of Tony Pulis. I mean, ahead of the game, he was saying that he thinks Tony Pulis, if he keeps Palace up, should be manager of the season. He said that he's complimented him quite a lot in the past as well. When other managers have railed against him for the tactics he employs and stuff. And I would have thought that Mourinho doing that would... He always tries to create a narrative around him and not around his players. Happened against Villa when Ramirez put that horrendous tackle and he got sent off. Mourinho was straight out there, got himself sent off as well, and made the story all about him, so no one would have turned their attention to what Ramirez had done, which was an X-rated tackle and really, really bad to watch. And the press in this country, which obviously fuels the 99% of all the Premier League coverage, they fall for it. They're completely seduced by Mourinho. They always have been. Ever since he came in at that famous first press conference where they misquoted him when he said, "I think I am a special one." They misquoted that, the special one. And ever since then, it's been this really sickening love affair. And whatever he does just gets coverage, and he knows he can use that to his advantage. And on that front, he is a genius. You know?
Yeah, I fall for it a lot. I mean, I'm
it's difficult not to be seduced by it because he is obviously box office, and he's dramatic, and he makes football entertaining, of course. But sometimes some of the stuff he does is really deplorable.
Absolutely, but that's why he's fascinating in that way. And maybe the Pulis fascination for him is there's no pretense with Tony Pulis. He is what he is. He does what he does. He wears a ball cap on the sideline, for crap's sake. I mean, this is a guy who doesn't go through any of that, extra stuff. Maybe Mourinho, in his own way, wishes he could be more like Tony, at least in the way he comports himself, rather than necessarily how he plays his football. Although there's a kindred spirit, perhaps, with Tony Pulis and Jose Mourinho in the style that they have been successful with in their own ways.
Yeah, they can both sort of play reactive football pretty well and defensive football pretty well. I mean, Pulis does a really good job of getting the players to believe in themselves and getting them to successfully employ restrictive tactics, because he knows he can get them to do that. And if they can react on the break and nick a goal, then fine. I think Palace and Tony Pulis' teams aren't great when they're expected to go away and win and do lots of different things. I mean, but I was going to say that I don't really want to give any disrespect to Palace in light of this game, though, because they actually played very well and they deserved to win. It wasn't a smash and grab job, I didn't think. They were huge outsiders in the betting. No one gave them a prayer. It was the Chelsea steamroller that were on their way to potentially a Premier League title, and they got beat, and they got beat quite well. And Palace and Pulis deserve a lot of credit for that.
Arsenal Man City played to a 1-1 draw. Matthew Flamini with the equalizer for Arsenal. A good result for the Gunners, and clearly with Chelsea losing away to Palace, it mucks up the top of the table a little bit, gives Arsenal that slim chance, that slim belief that they have a shot at the title. Have you cut them out of that picture? I mean, Liverpool winning, we'll get to that in a second. And City does have 2 games in hand on everyone around them.
Yeah, Arsenal are out of the picture, I think, purely because that result against City was typical Arsenal. I mean, nothing was expected of them. They were expected to not really win, and they conceded quite early. And then everyone was like, "Oh God, typical Arsenal," and they came out and got a point, which, fair enough, is a good point against a good Man City team. But it's no coincidence they did it when the pressure was off and they'd already lost everything and they had nothing to lose. I mean, they're out of the title race purely because they're not consistent enough, and they can't overhaul 3 teams at this stage of the season. There's no way. The title will essentially come. Listen, all being well, the title will essentially come down to those 2 games at Anfield. Liverpool, Chelsea, and Liverpool, Man City. Liverpool now know that they just got to win 6 games to win the title, and of course they're on the back of an 8-game winning streak, so it's no mean feat to go 14 games wins in a row. I think that's only been done a few times in the whole history of English football. So if they did that, they would be worthy winners. But if you gave any team the opportunity at this stage of the season to say, if you win 6 games in a row, you'll win the title, but anyone would take it. Anyone. So they've got to be in the box seat. There's just no chance that Arsenal can overhaul 3 teams, not 3 teams of that quality. Liverpool just score too many goals. I mean, the only thing you can hope for is that Liverpool, if you're an Arsenal fan, is that Liverpool draw against Chelsea and Man City, and Arsenal win all the rest of their games. And even then, you're really still going to be struggling, I think.
Liverpool, 4-0 win over Spurs, if I have that scoreline right. I'm sorry. Again, too much football this weekend.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and it started from the very beginning with the own goal, and it was not, Spurs was never in that game. And as much as it's about Liverpool top of the table, which is fantastic, I find it very difficult to sort of, take Spurs out of that equation. They're so underwhelming so often, Luke.
Yeah, not good enough. I mean, they're not. There's no joy not thinking. And we talked about this in the past. There's no joy not thinking at the very top of the club, and they've got a guy in charge who's not up to the job. But it's their own fault. You can't go away to Anfield and play in that way and set up in that way, and then the manager sits in the stands because, in his own words, he can't affect the game during the game. Or I suggest you're in the wrong game. Then you're in the wrong job if you can't affect the games during the game. It's part of your job. He's nowhere near good enough. He's out of his depth. Tactically completely naive. And Brendan Rodgers is a good manager, and Liverpool are a good team. And it could have been 7 or 8. That could have been an absolute headline-grabbing result yesterday. They're lucky to get out of that with 4. And that's really a sad indictment of what's happened at Spurs, given the amount of money they spent at the beginning of the season and what their hopes were. I mean, there was talk. I mean, listen, don't forget, there was talk, outside talk of a title shot this season for Spurs, and now they're just looking complete disarray. Sherwood's a dead man walking. He's not going to keep his job. So they've got 6 games left, or whatever it is, 6 or 7 games left, and we're just playing it out. I mean, it's not really a great amount of respect shown to season ticket holders who've got to go to the games knowing they're just in disarray. They've got no plan.
It's fascinating to compare what going on with Sherwood at Spurs with what Mourinho's doing. You just talked about how Mourinho makes it about himself to take the spotlight off his players, take the pressure off his players. Sherwood is the story, but only because he's so incompetent and because he makes himself the story through that incompetence. And really, there's not, and I know Spurs aren't in the title chase, but there's no reason to really focus on any of the Spurs players because they're just not, as you said, they're just not good enough. A couple of Eriksen's playing okay. Let's focus on that for a minute, but there's just not enough quality throughout that team. And then Sherwood is, I don't want to call him a joke because I think that's cruel, but he has made himself a laughingstock, and it's troubling to watch. It's troubling.
Yeah, I just think some of those players are highly rated players. I mean, they've performed elsewhere before, and they've performed in Spurs shirts, a lot of them here and there. It's just obviously it's up to the manager to get the best performances out of his players. And now you could argue that maybe Andre Villas-Boas wasn't doing that consistently enough, and there were problems behind the scenes, and he lost his job. But you can't put it all on the players. I mean, the players can take the responsibility for the results and the performances, but they've performed in other jobs at other clubs. They wouldn't have been signed for such big money, half these players, if they hadn't had a good reputation, played well in the past. And they're not getting the best out of them. It's just Sherwood. I've got no problem with Tim Sherwood personally. I've got no history of him or anything like that. He's just incompetent. He doesn't know what he's doing, and he shouldn't be learning his trade at a top half Premier League team. And it's not, in a way, it's not even really his fault.
No.
He's just got no idea of what he's doing, and it's sad for him because it may harm his chances in the future of getting another job.
Absolutely.
It's no great. It's no good all round, really.
Submarines his career from the beginning because Spurs is such a disaster at the top, and Andre Villas-Boas did not work out. Last thing I'll ask you here, as I'm running out of time, with Liverpool top of the table, and as you said, if they win 6, they win the title. And they are scoring goals for fun, and it's amazing to watch. To see a team with that much attacking prowess win the league would be great. But there's also the element, and this is kind of came up a bit on the broadcast, at least the one we got here in the States. It's that the league is better when Liverpool is in the title race or that good. Is that something you believe? Is the Premier League better when Liverpool is good?
Well, they're playing good football this season, and they're a good team to watch. And they're obviously, along with Manchester United, the biggest club in England. So, I mean, it's almost to a certain extent that's their rightful position. But, I mean, obviously, you've got to earn that. You don't just deserve to be there for the sake of it. And I think the type of football they've played this season and the way they've set about things and the players they've got, and it means that it's great that they're up there because it would be really good to see a swashbuckling, entertaining team win the title. I mean, no one would deny that, surely, unless they were, a fan of one of the rival clubs. So, yeah, I think it's great that they're up there, and, good luck to them, and I hope they do it because it'll be good to have a team like that who played that sort of football do it.
It's that, and it's the story, Liverpool winning their first Premier League title in that era. Thanks for your time. Luke Moore from the World Famous Football Ramble. Follow him on Twitter, Lukey Moore. Thank you for your time, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jason. Cheers, mate.
Right,
bye.
Let's take a break. When we come back, we will transition to MLS. Brian Dunseth will join us. Stay right there. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Back on Soccer Morning, joined now on the telephone by the hardest working man, American soccer broadcasting, Brian Dunseth, original winger. Hey, Brian, how are you, man?
What's going on, man? How are you?
I was just talking about the theme of today's show is I watch too much soccer because I watched everything. I watched MLS, I watched the Premier League, I watched the Super Classico, I watched Chivas America. I didn't watch Germany or Italy, some other very good leagues, but I watched too much soccer. So you're here to help me with my MLS. So let's start with your hometown team there in Salt Lake City. RSL beats TFC 3-0. And the storyline coming out of that game, Dunny, is this is TFC coming back down to earth or getting a reality check. And I think that's odd because it puts the focus on TFC, who I know spent a ton of money, but that was vintage RSL. I loved seeing that.
Yeah, it was vintage RSL. I think there was a lot of hesitation in the big picture to say that because I still think there's what I want to say is a little bit of, I don't know. I feel like people are still a little bit scared to give maybe Jeff Cassar and this team credit because they lost Jason Kreis in the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with the schedule, the start of this, it's the most difficult start of game that I've ever seen in the league. Away to LA, away to San Jose, home against LA, home against Toronto, at Kansas City, at Philadelphia, home against Portland. I mean, that's crazy. And to see where they come out undefeated, they've probably dropped 2 points against LA at home and at San Jose after giving up a 2-point lead, 2-goal lead. But I still think this is a very good team. In terms of Toronto, I think they're going to be a good team. I think what I saw on Saturday night was a team that was missing Jackson, a team that was missing Osorio, but still has the fight, still has the grit. And I think when they have a little bit more familiarity and understanding each other's tendencies, they're going to be a damn good team.
Is it wrong of me to say, based on what I watched in that game, is it wrong of me to say that there might not be a better passer from where he plays than Michael Bradley right now in MLS? I mean, I know it's a couple of games, but from what I've seen and how easily he set up Jermaine Defoe on multiple occasions, because they could have scored a couple of times despite getting shut out. It looks like he's right at the point. Go ahead.
Sorry, I agree with you. I think for my money, Michael Bradley, in terms of his position and a two-way player, I don't think you can compare. I know a lot of people want to make the comparison between Kyle Beckerman and himself. I think they play different. Well, they're the same position in a lot of ways. They're the completely different position in a lot of ways. But I've been saying this for a long time. When you put the U.S. men's national team in a situation where they need to maintain possession of the ball, I don't want anyone else on the ball except Michael Bradley. He's the difference maker for me. He always has been. He's the only guy on that team under pressure and when things are going wrong that he wants to play. And he's going to dip deep and he's going to get his foot on the ball. He's the complete opposite of Jermaine Jones. He wants the ball at his feet. He wants to be calm, cool, collected. He wants to be able to get his head up and bypass. He doesn't want to just go side to side and play simple. And I'm happy that U.S. fans actually get the opportunity to see him close up and don't have to tune in and hope that they get the feed of him playing in Europe.
Yeah, it was again, this is a developing team and they've got some ways to go before they're a contender. Even with the money that they spent, the troubling thing for TFC is, well, okay, let me go back to the game quickly because some of the controversy out of that game is the penalty on Daniel Henry as he sort of wrestled Alvaro Saborio to the ground. I don't really understand the complaints over that, Dunny, especially in light of the fact that this is what MLS is focusing on officiating wise in 2014.
Well, I think first I need to pay credit to Daniel Henry because I think he's going to be the mainstay and the rock of that Canadian national team, of that full team for a long, long time. I think the kid has all the physical tools in the world to be successful. And I think at 20 years old to be a starting center back in the league, that's a lot of credit to how far he's developed in a short amount of time. But he's going to learn lessons the hard way. And Sabo, I liken him to kind of the old school guys. The stern turn with Stern John. El Tanque Hurtado back in the day with LA and New York and New England. Those big post-up strikers, if you get too close, they're going to wrap you up. And the moment they wrap you up, you're in trouble. Yeah, because it doesn't matter how strong you are. If they spin you right, they spin you left, or if you try to fight them and they turn you, your hands are all over them. And the moment they go down from referees' view, the moment a big forward spins you, you're in trouble. And I would say 9 times out of 10, the referee is going to point to the spot. And what happened with Daniil is, yeah, Salvo wrapped him up. By the way, give credit to Javi for that first-time ball from the throw-in into his feet. But Salvo wraps him up, and by the time Salvo starts to turn, he gets that advantage. Daniil tries to overpower him and kind of throw him to the ground. So, yeah, I think it was a justified penalty call. I think it was the right call to make. I do give Salvo credit for doing everything in his power to force the referee to point to the spot. And Daniil, he knows better. He knows that the situation like that, you got to put your right arm in the middle of Sabo's back, give him a yard or two, and be able to have the vision to see where his turn and where that first touch is to be able to step in. And just look to toe poke. No way, shape, or form do you want to wrap up in that situation.
Well, I mean, look, he's, as you say, 20 years old, starting at center back for a team with the spotlight on him against one of the league's best in RSL and one of the best strikers in the league in Saborio. So give him a little bit of a pass as he learns his craft. But in terms of the general MLS approach to defending, how much of an adjustment is it if referees are gonna call this type of stuff? And we saw it in the New York game when Richard Eckersley, gets a little bit of McNamara, that's a penalty now. How much of an adjustment is going to be for guys to sort of play hands off when their instincts are, and in the past they've gotten away with putting their hands on players?
I would liken all of this focus on grappling in the box to the inconsistencies of the disciplinary committee. I mean, there's just a huge gray area that none of us will ever know. You throw in the human error factor with these referees. It is, amongst players, a gigantic talking point. Amongst, I think, coaching staffs and general managers, the same. It's just inconsistent. And I truly believe everything that Pro wants to execute on is worth executing on. But between human error and the frustrating inconsistencies we'll continue to see, we're just at times going to throw our hands up and say, all right, what is this 6-second rule that you guys speak of? What is this service from wide play and defenders wrapping up forwards and taking away their opportunity for goal scoring chances? And the grappling and the touching, and what is this? These off the ball fouls that you speak of that can get players suspended. I find it really interesting. I actually found it even more interesting, the fact that multiple teams were utilizing social media to go after, or at least put pressure on the disciplinary committee in the past week and a half to see if they could get action taken against an opponent, which I thought was pretty embarrassing in a lot of ways.
Yeah, lobbying the disciplinary committee over Twitter, that does not seem like professional behavior. I mean, like, everybody wants a competitive advantage. I mean, I know that players will try to get any advantage possible, and you're not gonna stop the chippiness and the cheap shots and the off the ball stuff. That's gonna take a long time for anything to change, and it happens everywhere. But to go on to Twitter and do that, to this point of what we're seeing, and it's not just about grappling. It's sort of about a rise in penalties, I guess. I mean, I haven't checked the stats, but I do know that the stat that the Colorado Rapids have scored 5 goals this year, and every single one of them has been a penalty, is insane, Dunny.
Yeah, it is. Again, I think for me, with the replacement ref issue going on early in the season, then the refs coming back in, my concern was over that 3.5 week break for the main referees. I was talking to a few of them behind the scenes and everything that they were dealing with, and kind of how the 9 guys that were full-time referees were basically showing solidarity for the other guys that weren't full-time referees. And, the 9 guys weren't gaining anything from kind of this whole collective bargaining agreement, but they were trying to put it all together for the guys behind the scenes, the guys that weren't full-time, which, by the way, I think is an amazing idea for so many reasons, because the moment that you make all of these referees full-time, I think it actually puts even more pressure on them to be successful and to be more consistent, because then that way they're not, their focus is completely about soccer as opposed to going back and being a teacher or a doctor or whatever else they may be. So there's a lot more accountability that comes with that. So I think that'd be a good thing all the way around. But the last 2 weeks for me haven't been so much about fitness, but it's been more about sharpness. And I think at times the hardest thing for referees is to have the feel for the game, to have the rhythm for the game. And the one thing I've always said is I wish more referees did their homework in their matchups to understand kind of some of these built-in rivalries that have happened. And it's not just team to team, but it's players to players, and understanding that if you have certain players that have moved, that still doesn't take, move from one team to another, that still doesn't take away the history in this league between certain players. And those little things, the awareness, how they talk to players, how physically they approach players with the chest up, and, the attitude, all those things come into play in a lot of different realms. But I think, it's an evolving process. It's an evolving product. And I'm glad that, the referees are back on, and we can see hopefully a little bit more consistency as we go forward.
We had a bunch of interesting results from this weekend in MLS. I'll go to Dallas, where FC Dallas beats Portland 2-1. And, while FC Dallas is playing well, and we had a weird off-the-ball Michael Harrington, Javon Watson thing, nobody seems to understand what happened there. I think the talking point out of that game is what's going on with Portland. And is it fair to to sort of wonder if there's something wrong with Portland, or, should we be giving them a chance to sort of work their way back into their full stretch as a team? Just because they won the West or finished first in the West last year doesn't mean they're going to come firing out of the gates this season.
Yeah, I'm surprised at the results early for Portland. I think Portland. I'm a huge fan of Caleb Porter and what he's done. I know a lot of people don't have the best impression of him. I've known Caleb for a long time. I think he's a great human being, and I love his intensity. He's a young Bruce, and I think that's what fires people up so much in terms of his approach and his belief in himself. But I think one thing people forget is they trade away Bright DK and they bring in Urruti. This year they've lost Ryan Johnson. And I know they've brought in a lot of dynamic players, but to me, from the outside looking in, and obviously I'm not at training every day, the one thing I was always impressed with Caleb was that he was able to change the look, even though he kept the same structure of his formation. And when you bring in a Piquidon, you bring in a Ryan Johnson, immediately that demands a lot of respect from the center backs. Whereas I think now, what I've seen so far from Portland is, you've got 2 smaller forwards that are a bit dynamic, and their tendencies are to kind of drop in underneath, where you don't have that pure front runner that brings that physical dynamic to the table. So I think it's a team that's going to continue to be very, very good. They're going to be consistent. I think a couple of the results haven't gone their way based on a couple different factors, but I think more they have familiarity amongst each other and playing style. That's going to be a big key going forward for them. And as always, I said this once Caleb got the job. That organization has proven that they're very, very capable of going out into the market and finding players. And I would not be surprised come this next transfer window that they go out and they find themselves maybe a big athletic type striker that can score goals.
It seems that they're missing Rodney Wallace a little bit more than maybe we even thought they would. And Rodney Wallace was excellent last year. Caleb Porter, I won't say revived Wallace's career. He certainly transformed what Wallace could do and how good he was in this league. And to have him missing, the next 4 months still, or 3 months, I mean, that's going to have an impact.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I think hopefully maybe the idea is once we start getting near that Champions League, CONCACAF Champions League window, Rodney's coming back. I thought Zach Awani coming was a good pickup because, after that horrific injury, I was about 15 feet away when that happened in Colorado a few years ago. I think he needed mentally to have someone that he knew was going to be in his corner, and that's no disrespect to Ziggy. I just think when you have the history with players at a certain age bracket, it kind of lends to a little bit more of a support system and understanding. So I think that's a good pickup. I think overall, I've been impressed with all the pickups. The only one that I still have a couple questions is the center back from Argentina. But outside of that, I think, it's still the same team. I think the belief is still there. The fight and the grit is still there. Mm-hmm. And if I just look at last year alone, the only team they couldn't beat was Real Salt Lake. I don't think much changes. I think it's just getting back to, that first one or two wins and everything gets going. And people forget, and we all know it's a long, long season. It's a short turnaround time in the off season. So if you pick up an injury, there's not, and you have to go into the knife. It's not like back in the day when we were starting these games in May. I mean, we're starting real early nowadays. So it's a pretty unforgiving schedule if you're not healthy, and if you're missing a few key players to start the year.
A couple of other games I want to hit on. First, Columbus beating Seattle with a late winner from Justin Merrim. Now, when you saw that, what did you make of the way that corner came off? Because, clearly Seattle fans are like, why didn't the Sounders react at all? Is there something wrong with the way that was officiated?
No disrespect to Ziggy and all the guys that were talking publicly after the game, but I didn't see anything wrong with the refereeing.
Okay.
I know there's always been a little controversy with that referee in particular in this league, but when I watched the highlights, I did not see anything that indicated anything other than Seattle fell asleep, and that was an unbelievable goal by Justin Merrim.
Absolutely.
I don't see anything else. And listen, we can, I think coaches will always do everything in their power to benefit maybe some of those questionable scenarios. But yeah, I didn't see anything outside of Seattle not paying attention and thinking that, all right, this has got to be the last kick of the ball. Oh, okay, cool. That's a short corner taken. That's a lot easier than dealing with a ball whipped into the box. And if Justin Merrim doesn't bury that, curl that one from the outside the 18 to the far post, it's a non-conversation. So great goal by Merrim. Again, the team that I've been most impressed with to start the year under a new head coach is Columbus. It's a completely different looking team. Knowing Greg for so long, being a part of the national team when he was in camp, he is putting on the field a style of play which is everything that he believed in as a player, and he's executing it very, very well.
Isn't it awesome when that comes together and the vision actually, is expressed and successful? I mean, that's it. He could have made these changes and it have been a period of adjustment, and they may go through, they'll go through bad stretches. As you said, it's a long season, but for the time being, they're sort of taking the league by storm with this new look. And instead of, it's the Columbus Crew, it's, wow, look, it's the Columbus Crew.
Yeah, he's, Higuain is continuing to be Higuain, but I don't think people realize Higuain's playing a little bit more of a deeper style than he has previously for that team. He's getting the most out of Arrieta. Will Trapp has, for me, really proven to be one of the bright. I think people are going to be speaking of him. I think he's going to probably, with the success he'll have this year, people will put him in front of Perry Kitchen for the next young central midfielder coming out of MLS. The way they push both outside backs forward to get into the attack, the fact that they were able to get Waylon Francis from Costa Rica. I was doing a few of his games in CONCACAF Champions League, and I actually had guys from MLS saying, please stop talking about him. And they would text me that because we want to file a discovery on him as soon as possible. Please shut up. So I think that was a good pickup. But the fact they split two center backs, both Chani and Will Trapp kind of drop a little bit deeper and kind of fill that space and give them the balance. But at the same time, they're looking to get forward continuously. I've been impressed. It's been a long time since the Crew fans, in my opinion, had a style of play which they could be proud of. And I think they will be. And we always wonder when ownership comes in and takes over what it's going to look like. And no one really knew what Precourt was about. And the fact that kind of McCullers is being pushed out, there's no Bliss, there's no Warzija, and everything is going into kind of the pot for Greg Berhalter to kind of hold on to. Have that much responsibility and have this much success so early is nothing short of incredible, in my opinion.
I think it's fantastic that U.S. Soccer is starting that U23 team because it's going to give an opportunity. Because Will Trapp, U20 fixture, but now there's got to be a gap before he's ready to play at the senior level. Give these guys a chance to get some games in the national team setup. Will Trapp, Luis Gil, all of these guys. Well, Gil could skip ahead, but some of these other guys an opportunity to play because you might forget. You'll see Will Trapp play in MLS, but he needs to have that connection to the national team as well. Before I transition us to some national team news and get your opinion on that, let me ask you about one more moment of quote unquote controversy. New England's goal that Lee Wynn scored to beat San Jose at Buckshaw. Some talk about that ball rolling and not being at a dead stop before that free kick. Is that something that really anybody should be focusing on?
From a home broadcast that just gave up a goal in a 94th minute, probably.
They
probably.
did. They did. They certainly made the most out of it. Look, I mean, obviously the rule is the ball's got to be stopped, but they played it quick. And again, it's an issue of the Quakes can't fall asleep. They're not waiting for the ball to stop before they start moving to mark guys, are they?
Yeah, I mean, we know this. Have we seen that play called back because the ball was still rotating? Yeah. In the letter of the law, yeah. But realistically, I mean, I put that in the same category of should you call a foul or should you point to the spot every time the ball is whipped into the box? Mm-hmm. The problem on that play is that Victor Bernardez he committed the foul. He turned around with that look on his face, wasn't paying attention. Charlie Davies utilized all the experience that he's ever had and been told since he was a kid, play quickly. He put the ball down and got it going. And then the Goonies got goonied. I mean, it was a good goal. I don't have a problem with it whatsoever. The only controversy around that is that it was the home team's highlights. And for the first time, I think, ever in the history of Buckshaw Stadium, someone came back and scored and added extra time.
Yeah, we'll see what San Jose is going to be a fascinating story this year. Wando gets a goal. Obviously, New England, good to have an actual goal of their own because they hadn't scored yet. And then Bernardez puts the ball in the net in the most hilarious way possible. I feel bad for Victor Bernardez. This is just a bad situation. His standing leg, his bottom leg just clips the ball. Anyway, let's move on before I got to move to Super Classico with Sam Kelly in a minute. Let's talk about this national team news, Donnie, just to get your opinion. Jurgen Klinsmann making a change with his number two, his top assistant, Martin Vasquez, out. Now, the headline of the press release was that Bertie Votes is coming in as a special advisor, but buried in it was Vasquez is being reassigned, Tab Ramos is taking over. Is it something that should be concerning? I mean, it is awfully close to the World Cup to be shaking up your coaching staff, is it not?
Yeah, again, it was buried. It was absolutely buried at the bottom of that press release. I like Jurgen. I think Jurgen, in a lot of ways, is doing so many things right. In particular, focusing on the development and the restructuring we've seen from the lower levels in U.S. soccer. And listen, his record speaks for itself. I mean, he's been incredibly successful, and he's come in with, these big statements of style and substance. And sometimes we've got it, sometimes we haven't. And unfortunately, we got the short end of the stick with this draw heading into the World Cup. But I think any time that you're able to bring in experience, and Bertie Votes has plenty of experience coaching and success at the national team levels, failures at the national team levels, and to give a guy like Tab Ramos, who's had, in my opinion, a lot of success with the 20s in a short amount of time, and I think has his finger on the pulse of what the next movement of young players are coming through. Because listen, outside of the recent identification of Luis Gil and DeAndre Yedlin in terms of American kids playing in the U.S. Getting Julian Green's a big get. I think getting Terrence Boyd was a big get. But to have him there, he's a World Cup player. He has the experience of playing in Europe. He has the experience of playing Major League Soccer. I think it's the right fit. Dropping Vasquez is huge. Mm-hmm. I mean, that make no mistake about it. Martin Vasquez not being an assistant coach underneath Jurgen Klinsmann, if that's what I'm reading, that from a conspiracy theorist point of view, I mean, people are going to say, did they have a falling out? What happened?
Right.
Was there a fist fight in the Honduras locker room? What's going on?
Yeah.
I'm shocked. I couldn't believe it. I'm wondering how that potentially affects Luis Gil's chances to make the World Cup team. Because I think I've been laying it out for a while. I think if you look at what this group of death looks like, and if you're realistic, you're going to say U.S. isn't getting through. Mm-hmm. I'm a U.S. fan. I want the U.S. to get through, but if you're being realistic on this group of death, you're saying there's the chance they get through. All right, well, now you fast forward. U.S. at Luis's age group and DeAndre's age group and Julian Green's age group have to qualify for the next Olympics. Mm-hmm. We haven't been successful for a long, long time qualifying for the Olympics and playing in the Olympics since my group in 2000 that went to the bronze medal match. Mm-hmm. You need to get that group together. And that was earlier to your point about Will Trapp. The one thing that we haven't done since 2000 and underneath Clive Charles is had that age group together for 3+ years so they understand each other, they understand what the philosophy is of the coach, and they understand what the competition looks like. And I know MLS has changed since then. But now, so Luis, World Cup now, qualifying, potential Olympics, and then the next World Cup where you're looking at guys at the 24, 25-year-old range. I think it's highly, highly important for these young players to get some type of experience in Brazil. And that may just be being there. Wow. That may just be being a practice player. Right. They might not even be a part, of what would be considered, the subs list, the first 5 guys that Jurgen's looking to. But you need that experience because these are the guys you're going to lean to. We haven't identified the next Michael Bradley. Mm-hmm. We haven't identified the next Landon Donovan. We haven't identified the next Clint Dempsey. There's really no young players that we've identified are the guys that are going to break through. So once we get past this 4 years, what's that next team going to look like? And I think right now, I'm hoping that Jurgen's starting to think about that and giving these guys as much experience as possible, as opposed to looking at the guys right now that are 29, 30, 31 that may have an incredible amount of experience, but probably aren't going to play any role whatsoever in coming off the bench and making an impact in Brazil.
Now, there's a way to look at this, that this is a move towards the future that may dismay some American fans who say, go all in on this World Cup. But again, as you said, if you're going to be realistic about it, maybe it's a good idea to prepare for 2018 or prepare for the Olympics 2016 and then ahead to 2018. That's Brian Johnson, the original winger on Twitter, the hardest working man in American soccer broadcasting. He's everywhere. Thanks for your time as always, Dunny. I appreciate it, man.
I appreciate it. And for all those kind words, I'll make sure I'll tuck a 20 in the mail for you.
Oh, you do that. All right. I'll get you my address. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, Sam Kelly will join us to talk about Super Classico, Boca River. Always fun at La Bombonera. Don't go anywhere. Soccer Morning, North America Soccer Network, NASN.TV.
They're the in crowd. We're the other ones.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Back on Soccer Morning, joined now by Sam Kelly, HEGS_com on Twitter. I have that right. I should have it up in front of me. That is his handle. He's also Hand of Pod podcast, Argentine football expert joining us. Hi, Sam.
Hi, Jason. How are you?
I'm good. I was the theme of today's show, because it's my show and I get to direct the theme, is that I watch too much football. And I watched a ton of football this weekend. One of the things I watched, and brilliant that there was a free, legal, high-quality stream available on YouTube, was the Super Classico Boca River at La Bombonera. And, you know, Sam, I don't know if you're aware of this. There's a fetish out there where people are actually attracted to inanimate objects. I think I have that with La Bombonera. Is that wrong?
I think it is, because I'm a River Plate fan. I would say that.
Well, then we have a difference of opinion. I just love that building, and I love that stadium and the look of it. And obviously for this match, it is a wonderful stage. The field was not good, though.
No, that wasn't entirely the fault of Boca's ground staff. It was there was very, very, very heavy rain here in Buenos Aires on late Saturday night going into Sunday morning for several hours. I was out on Saturday night, and unfortunately I was forced to duck into a second bar and have a couple more drinks on the way home because the rain was so torrential.
Was there ever a thought of postponing this match, or was it just a matter of get as much water off the field as possible and let's play?
It was talked about in the hours before, and I think they realised quite quickly that if you postpone the Super Classico, then it really is not something that Argentine football can get away with doing. They did have to do it 2 or 3 years ago. I think it was 3 years ago. They had to replay most of the match on the Wednesday after the original Sunday schedule, but that was because there was a very, very, very torrential downpour during the match, which just made it completely unplayable. It was far worse than it was. But the earlier match yesterday, Lanús against Rosario Central, the pitch was, if anything, even worse. So I think there would have been complaints if they'd called the Super Classico off.
Now, this is one of the best things about the Super Classico, just like all of the great derbies around the world, is that it doesn't really matter where these teams sit in the table when they play each other. They are that great of rivals, and in this case, in this current season, Torneo Final, the Boca is down mid-table, and by virtue of their win, by the way, we'll talk about the notability of River winning at La Bombonera. River is now in fourth place. Either one of these teams disappointed with where they sit? Are they? I mean, obviously they're traditional powers, but I'm not entirely sure as to what their expectations were coming into this particular season.
The expectations remain as high as ever.
Okay,
regardless.
fair enough. Fair enough.
Boca, of course, are disappointed with 12th place. River, although you say they're fourth, it's they're only 1 point behind the league leaders, who are on the Santa Fe at the moment. They lost for only the second time this year, and they're level on points with the Estudiantes and with Vélez. So suddenly River have got a real, honest-to-God title challenge on their hands, and it's the first one that's looked this promising, really, since they came back up to the top flight. They did finish second, I think it was, in their first short championship back. But this one somehow seems a bit more convincing. So they're rather optimistic about things at the moment. They've started scoring goals again, because they were struggling for goals for a long time. And the world is good, whereas Boca less so. I mean, Boca are still only 5 points further behind, because the whole championship race is ridiculously congested, from Colón in top on 18 points down to Boca level with a few other teams. So down to Gimnasia in 15th with 12. We've only got 6 points separating the top 12 teams from 20-team table, with half of the championship now gone, of course. It's only a 19-match championship. Go on.
Well, so we had a little bit of an issue with your quality, but I was going to just jump in and talk about this match in particular. I guess the best moment, clearly for Boca fans, not you, was Riquelme's free kick. But in the end, River gets the win. Ramiro Funes Mori scores the winning goal. And for anybody looking for an American connection to this game, he is it. He and his twin brother spent time in Dallas, were with FC Dallas briefly before going down and signing with River Plate. Is River's win, again, from what I read, it's the first time in a decade they've won away to Boca?
Yeah, that's right. It's actually only the second time in the last 10 matches that they've won home or away against Boca, if we don't count pre-season friendlies, because they won a few of those. But yeah, first away win in La Bombonera in almost exactly a decade. The last one was in May 2004. So it feels like a weight lifted from the shoulders as well. I mean, the sports papers websites yesterday and the actual papers this morning are reporting it almost as if it's their first ever win in La Bombonera, because I suppose in a way, for a generation of fans, it's one they'll be able to remember.
Riquelme, again, the free kick, a thing of beauty, and I get this sense that, he is, how much longer can he do this, I guess, is the question. And how much longer does he have? And we go through sort of is he leaving? Is he not? Is he, when is he going to actually hang it up, or when is he going to leave Boca? Is that coming anytime soon?
How much longer is he going to be able to kick free kicks like that? Or how much longer can he?
how much? Well, yeah, so essentially all of it, I suppose. I mean, the way that he plays and what he's asked to do at Boca, it doesn't require him to move that much.
No.
Certainly in relation to the rest of his teammates.
In terms of how much use he is to Boca, I think he's already past his best for probably about the last 2 years. He's been immobile almost while play has been taking place, and in many ways it's harmed the team to be so reliant on him, because they really are reliant on him still. When he's on the pitch, they win far more points, they score more goals, they look more creative than when he isn't. Even though you saw yesterday what he does, he's the set piece taker and nothing more. I mean, it was a phenomenal free kick, and in terms of how long he'll be able to take those for, I think he'll still be able to kick them when he's 93 years old, because he's just got the technique, the muscle memory to do that. In terms of how much longer he'll be at Boca, this might have been his last Super Classico, because there was talk before the game about, during the week before the game, about the fact that he can't agree a new contract with the directors. The club are starting to question his usefulness, as well as in one or two quarters. I don't think it's too serious at the moment, but as well as manager Carlos Bianchi's usefulness. Yesterday's match was a big pressure game. Whether the club are going to reverse their stance on that now that Riquelme has scored a glorious goal in the Super Classico, we'll have to wait and see. But as of yesterday afternoon, it was looking very much like this would be his final Super Classico.
Do you imagine that he retires if he leaves and he can't agree to a contract, or does he seem like he wants to continue despite his immobility and perhaps not really fitting in many other places?
With Riquelme, it's impossible to say. I mean, a year and a half ago, well, a year and a quarter ago, in January 2013, we had to endure a month of wondering whether he was going to be back or not, because he'd announced in December at the end of the previous 6-month championship that was it, that he wasn't. He wanted to play football still, but he didn't want to play for Boca anymore because he'd had a big disagreement with the board. He wasn't going to be back, and he spent the whole month of January in his house and in his family house near Tigres Stadium in the north of Buenos Aires suburbs, just in his own words, drinking mate, and which is local to Argentine version of tea or coffee, and having a kick about with his brother and his friends. He ended up patching up his differences with Boca because they realised it was making them look very bad PR-wise, and coming back for his current spell. But for a while there was talk about he might have played at Tigre. Tigre are actually the club he supported when he was a kid. They're his boyhood club, even though he's never played for them. So he might end up playing somewhere else, but of course he's almost a year and a half by the time the championship ends older. He's got a year and a half more wear on his knees. So whether it's going to be the same thing again, we don't know. I kind of hope not, because it was interminable last January. It seemed like the whole story was just never going to end, and there was nothing else to talk about.
Moving on from the Super Classico and talking about the Argentine football in general, I hate to have to do this every time we talk to you, Sam, and it's been a while, but one of the things that's always a conversation is the health of Argentine football. Clearly, we don't want to talk about the issues with the Barra Bravas and the violence, and I haven't heard anything recently, and I don't want to make it about that, but sort of in general, how is the Argentine Primera getting along, and with all of the financial issues that have been coming up in the last couple of years, where does the league sit sort of in relation to the wider South American picture?
Well, the free YouTube streaming that you mentioned for the Super Classico is available for the majority of Argentine league matches these days, and I have to say that normally the quality of the stream is better than the quality of the football. We've had a championship during the Torneo Inicial, which is the first half of the season, the one that runs from August to December. There were a lot of points dropped. It was, I think, San Lorenzo won it with the lowest points total since the 3-point for a win era came in, which in Argentina was in 1995, which gives you some idea of how many points were being dropped by absolutely everybody in the run-in. And right now it's exacerbated because the very best teams in the league, Lanús, Newell's Old Boys, San Lorenzo, are playing in the Copa Libertadores, and there are a whole load of midweek rounds. When those teams aren't playing in the Libertadores in midweek, they have to play in the league in midweek, because of course the Argentine league has to get finished along with everything else a month before the World Cup. Even though very few of the players in this league are actually going to go to the World Cup. That means that there's player fatigue because a lot of the squads aren't very big, and it means that a load of teams are dropping points, which is why, as I say, we've got 15 teams within 6 points of one another at the top, in inverted commas, of the table, with 9 games to go. So it really is anybody's to win. But Colón, for example, the league leaders are currently battling relegation as well, because right. I think I mentioned to you before that Argentine relegation is worked out on a 3-year-long table. And Colón were very much in crisis in December. They lost almost their entire first-team playing staff in January over disputes over unpaid wages. They had a disastrously bad Torneo Inicial, and suddenly they've begun the Torneo Final they began it with a defeat, and then they went on an 8-game or 9-game unbeaten run up until yesterday, when they lost to Arsenal de Sarandí 1-0 to sit top of the table. So in a way, it's a very dramatic championship, and we're going to have a run-in which is going to be, who knows who's going to win it. It doesn't look like any of the teams involved in the Libertadores are going to be involved at this stage. But you wouldn't like to make any predictions. That's the good side of it on the pitch.
It's parity through mediocrity is the sense that I'm getting here.
Exactly.
Let me ask you about the Libertadores and whether or not Argentine teams have a legitimate chance in this year's competition, and what it would mean for an Argentine team to win the Libertadores at this point.
It would be huge, particularly after a few years in which the Libertadores has been dominated by Brazilian clubs. They've won the last, I think, 4 in a row now. Have been Brazilian sides. The Argentine representatives are doing well. San Lorenzo aren't. San Lorenzo are frustrated by this because they're the only one of Argentina's big 5 who've never won the Copa Libertadores. But the others, I'm just checking the group stages now whilst talking to you. Vélez Sarsfield are very much in line for promotion qualification from their group. Lanús are clinging on, but they got a 2-0 win over Cerro Porteño in the last round of matches, which took them from bottom of the group to top of the group. 3 of the teams in their group have got 7 points, and then O'Higgins of Chile are bottom of the league with 6. which gives you an idea of how tight that one is with one game to go. Newell's Old Boys have thrown a couple of points away, but they look okay to qualify. They're top of the group with a game to go anyway. And Arsenal de Sarandí, who won the Copa Sudamericana a year and a half ago, are for the first time ever. They're in the knockout stages of the Copa Libertadores already, so they're actually doing better than anyone else, even though they're doing quite poorly in the league because they're concentrating absolutely everything they've got on the Libertadores with a very small squad. Arsenal aren't going to win it. They've not got the big match experience. They don't have the squad to go all the way. But Newell's or San Lorenzo, I would say, Newell's or Vélez Sarsfield could do. Newell's went to the semi-final last year. And after a little bit of a transition period after Gerardo Martino left the club, he's obviously now the Barcelona manager, under his former assistant Eduardo Berti. They've picked themselves up again, and at home at least they're starting to look close to their best. They still need to sort themselves out a bit away, but they have a very real chance. And for an Argentine side to win it would certainly inject a little bit of a good feeling back into the league for footballing terms, I think.
No, it'd be interesting ahead of the World Cup in Brazil, I imagine, as well. Estudiante's last Argentinian team to win in 2009. And as you said, last 4 titles going to Brazilian teams. And Boca in 2012 was a finalist, lost to Corinthians. Let me finish up here with you, Sam, on a question about, you mentioned how these teams are having, if they're not in the Copa Libertadores, they're playing midweek, and it's stretching the squads, and got to get finished ahead of the World Cup. But very few players from the league will be going to the World Cup, or certainly playing for Argentina. How does the fact that Argentina's talent is all exported and is all playing abroad, how does that affect the league? I mean, it's obviously a big question in sort of aspiring football nations like the United States, but in Argentina, where there's so much history with the league, what does it mean when all of the best players are playing somewhere else?
It means the way you put it earlier was a very good one. It means parity through mediocrity, really. It means what we refer to down here as a bit of a talent donut, because there are a bunch of very, very young kids and a bunch of old guys whose knees are going, and there's nothing in the middle. Or what is in the middle, obviously, is not, the players who aren't good enough to, at the age of 25 or 26, to be playing in Europe, or maybe you've given it a go and have come back with their tails between their legs. For the most part, there are 1 or 2 late bloomers or hidden gems who've somehow managed to get to this stage of their career and still be here. But apart from that, it's not much. The ones that do come back almost seem to be dragged down at times by the mediocrity of the league. Fernando Gago is a good example. He's playing in Argentina because his wife, Gisela Dulco, had their first child last year, and the couple wanted the child to be born in Argentina. So he came back specifically for that purpose, when a move to a European club, another European club, I should say, would be perfectly possible. He played very well for Vélez. He played all right for Boca after moving to them. And now, so far this year, he's been woeful for Boca Juniors. He's been one of the worst performers in a severely underperforming team. And he's nailed on to be one of the starting 11 at Argentina's World Cup campaign. And a lot of people are getting very worried about that. Obviously, if a player with his amount of international experience and his amount of European club experience is playing that way, then it says quite a lot for some of the players who aren't making it in the squad.
It's very interesting stuff. Obviously, Super Classico, a fantastic stage for Argentine football. And as I said, I love La Bombonera. I don't really care if you don't, Sam. It's just a fun. I want to visit the place. I haven't seen it in person, but just on television, it's fantastic. YouTube stream. Fantastic presentation. Sam Kelly, go follow him on Twitter, HEGS_com. Check out Hand of Pod. Check out everything that Sam does. He writes all over the place on Argentine and South American football. I appreciate your time, Sam. Thanks a lot.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
There he goes. There's Sam. We're going to finish up today's show. Last couple of minutes here. Phone lines are open 347-756-6276. And what I get to now, after getting through not getting through, enjoying our chats with Luke Moore and Brian Dunseth and Sam, is the news that Puebla is not going to release DeMarcus Beasley and Michael Orozco for the United States to play Mexico on Wednesday. No replacements named. Clearly, Puebla has the right to do this because it's not a FIFA date. They're not required to release these players. They're putting their foot down. They're saying no DMB, you can't go, no Orozco. And what does it mean? I think the biggest question for national team fans is who's going to play left back? You're looking at this roster, you're going, well, where's the starting left back? I think the obvious thing to do for Jurgen Klinsmann is to flip someone like Michael Parkhurst, your most experienced fullback you have in this camp, in this roster, and maybe start DeAndre Yedlin at right back. You have Tony Beltran, too. You bring him in as a replacement for Brad Evans. He could get a start, but I think that based on what you had before adding Beltran to the roster, it's going to end up with a right-footed player playing left back and probably DeAndre Yedlin. It's just throwing him. Look, it's Mexico in a friendly, but it's going to be in front of 60,000, 70,000 people, whatever that stadium holds. Is this too much too soon for DeAndre Yedlin, or did you just say, hey, look, why coddle the kid? Just throw him in there, see what he can do. I would love to see DeAndre Yedlin go up against Marco Fabian. Talk about a trial by fire. DeAndre Yedlin, are you scared of that? That's national team fans. Are you scared of DeAndre Yedlin having to go up against Mexico? Whoever they have on the field, whether it's Fabian or not. No guarantees that Fabian starts, but we just got done watching him torch Sporting Kansas City. And while you hope DeAndre Yedlin is way, 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 way above what Sporting Kansas City put on the field that day, it does make you a little bit worried. How important is this game for U.S. fans? It's Mexico. You always want to win. But how much are you putting into this game? Because now the narrative, the storyline has been completely hijacked by the changes in the staff for the United States men's national team. By Jurgen Klinsmann essentially sending Martin Vasquez off on his way, whatever that means, and bringing in Tab Ramos into that position. Tab Ramos, the U20 coach and a guy who has been learning on the job, obviously a fantastic playing career. Maybe he's more adept at the tactical side of the game than Vasquez was, because that was the criticism with Martin Vasquez. But as Brian Dunseth said, the fascinating part of that is that Klinsmann and Vasquez have been attached at the hips for how long now? 8 years? Something like that? I mean, Vasquez was with Klinsmann when Klinsmann was managing Bayern Munich. That's how close these guys are. This is, name a famous pair of people. This is those guys. This is, I don't even know how to describe the dynamic, but it's shocking. It is. It's shocking that Martin Vasquez has been moved out of that position. I think the less interesting thing is that Ramos is taking the job, because I actually have faith that Tab Ramos can do the job and do it well. The Birdie Votes thing, there's a lot of why with Birdie Votes. And I get that too, but he's got experience. He's obviously knows Germany. He's recently played, one of the other teams in the group. Maybe it was Ghana, maybe it was Portugal, can't remember, as the head coach of Azerbaijan. He has history with African football, having managed Nigeria. There is some history there. There's some reason that, and look, he's a consultant. He's not going to be, I don't think he's going to be on the staff. I don't think you're going to see Birdie Votes on the sideline with the U.S. national team. They're going to bring him in. They're going to pick his brain. Clinton's going to say, well, what do you see here? And use that to his advantage. Birdie Votes' issues as the manager of Scotland have nothing to do with this position. Because I saw my man Graham Ruthven. I'm sorry. I can't remember how to say it. Riven. Graham Riven on Twitter. Talking about how Birdie was a disaster with Scotland. Again, it doesn't really matter in this position. All right. So I've watched too much football the last couple of days, and yet here I go. I'm probably going to watch Sunderland West Ham. I'm probably going to do that. I could go back and, it's like archive games on MLS Live. I'm sure I could go find some game on YouTube from, 10 years ago to watch. Maybe that would be better. But I'm probably going to watch Sunderland West Ham because I have a problem. My name is Jason, and I have a problem. My problem is I watch too much soccer. Hopefully you have that problem too. And we can commiserate over this. If you're interested in commiserating, get us on Twitter @Soccer Morning. send us some email, show@soccermorning.com. We are on iTunes. We're working on the live stream, Stitcher and TuneIn and all of that. We are working on that, guys. I know that's frustrating for some people, but we are in the process of figuring that out. And always, you can always watch the show back on YouTube. I know streaming is tough on YouTube. Always watch the show back there. It goes up. It's ready to be reviewed 5 minutes after the show's over. Something like that. Something very quick, right? It's a quick turnaround. Got to thank Luke Moore, World Famous Football Ramble, Lukey Moore on Twitter, Brian Dunstith, Original Winger. Follow him, Sam Kelly, HEGS_com, for their insights today. I like doing the around the world bit. We did England. We did Argentina. We did MLS. We did the United States. It's fantastic. It's what makes this show fantastic. Also have to thank starting goalkeeper of the Colorado Rapids when he's healthy, Clint Irwin. I think he just signed a new contract, right? Congratulations to Clint for his new contract. Congratulations, Clint, on your new contract. Clint Irwin was the guest DJ for today. Tomorrow, I'm looking forward to tomorrow. Maxi Rodriguez's lineup is tomorrow. Am I going to like this? Am I going to like Maxi's picks? I don't know. I'm a little afraid. Football Intellect, Maxi Rodriguez on Twitter. Speaking of Argentine, Maxi. Okay. Anyway, let's take a break. Let's finish this up. Thanks a lot for listening to the Monday edition of Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV. We'll be back tomorrow with another fantastic episode and more fantastic music. We'll play you out here with the National. Don't go anywhere, or talk to you tomorrow. I keep saying that. Don't go anywhere. I'm gone. I'm leaving. Bye, guys.
Stay out super late tonight, picking apples, making pie. Put a little something in our lemonade and take it with us. We'll laugh away in a fake empire.